How could anyone understand Alan and I at the deepest of deep levels if they've never done 7 episodes, if they've never gone to the gym 6 times a week, if they haven't been doing this for 5 years, if they've never been too broke to eat?
And it's really easy to say, oh, that person's not good at fighting because you're seeing them get their butt kicked, so to speak, in entrepreneur land. But yet you've never been in a fight, so you don't understand what they're going through, and you don't understand the growth curve of how much better they're getting at fighting in this analogy.
Next Level Nation, welcome back to another very special, as always, episode of Next Level University, where we teach you how to level up your life, your love, your health, and your wealth. We hope you enjoyed our latest episode, number 878, last week's live Q&A. How do you know if someone really has your best interest at heart? Today, for episode number 879, why you may never be understood. I don't want to Jeff it like I did last time. So Alan and I talk a lot about our past relationships on this podcast because looking back, they were either out of alignment or maybe there were some warning signs that they weren't going to work. I remember, I call it a situationship. If you've heard us talk about it before, you'll know what I'm talking about. But I remember the person I was dating, I would always say, hey, we're getting a new client, or hey, we have this really big person coming on the podcast, or hey, we're traveling to go do this thing, or we're going to this event, or we have this mentor. And she always used to say, I don't understand why you're doing this. I don't get what you hope is going to happen. And one of the things she used to say, Alan, I think I told you this because I got frustrated, is she said, I think you put a lot of your faith into Alan, and you're kind of, I don't remember the phrase. It was like a somewhat negative phrase of, I feel like you're kind of letting him lead you in directions that you might not want to go. And I got frustrated by that. And I said, well, you just don't understand. You just don't understand what we're building. And now in retrospect, looking back on that, it kind of all makes sense. If you've never been to the beach, how would you understand what the beach is like? If you've never been on a podcast, how would you understand what it's like to speak into a microphone? If you've never been to a live event, how would you understand what it's like to speak on stage at that event? At the end of the day, if you've never experienced it, if you've never practiced it, if you've never lived it, if you've never been in the arena, you're probably not going to understand it. And if you've gone through your life feeling misunderstood by the people around you, I want to help you have more empathy for that in the future and really think about it. Okay, how could anyone understand Alan and I at the deepest of deep levels if they've never done 7 episodes, if they've never gone to the gym 6 times a week, if they haven't been doing this for 5 years, if they've never been too broke to eat, if they aren't doing group coaching, if they don't have a 13-person team, if they're not, your level of understanding is probably correlated to the level of time you've spent in that arena. So next time you feel misunderstood, honestly, it's probably a good thing. It probably means that you've differentiated yourself from a lot of other people, but look at it through the lens of empathy. Of course, people won't understand exactly what you're doing if they've never done it, because if you told me what Alan and I would be doing 5 years ago today, there is 0% chance I would be able to understand where we are. Some days I still struggle to understand where we actually are. So I want to have empathy with people, and I think if you're out there, maybe this will help you get through that judgment.
Kev, so this is not the first time that someone has told someone that I'm leading or guiding that they think that I'm leading or guiding this person astray. And so I want to ask you, what would you, to help our listeners or viewers, when they are feeling misunderstood, I do think that there's 2 things. Number 1, yes, empathize. But number 2 is try to communicate it the best you can, especially if it's someone who you think might be unintentionally taking the wind out of your sails. And if when you try to communicate it and say, I want you to please respect my decisions, if they lash back at you or villainize someone who's a mentor or guide to you, and they really don't get it, there is the other side of this of maybe you're in the wrong room. And so what advice would you give yourself, Kev, back then, knowing what you know now about how obviously she didn't understand?
I don't know. I think you can spend a lot of time trying to get people to understand, but I don't even know that it's worth it in the long run. And I don't want to sound negative, but it has to be one of those things of just trust me. Like, you just have to trust that my awareness is high enough to know that I'm making the best decisions for myself in my future, or myself in our future, if this is somebody that you're planning on spending your life with, or if it's your family. You have to understand that this is my life and I'm doing what I believe is the best for my long-term visions. I don't really know, Alan, genuinely. I don't know that I have a good answer to that. What would you?
I would never have had a good answer to that in the past, because I don't think that I've done a great job in this arena. I've felt misunderstood most of my life because I've always been very future-oriented and vision-oriented. And it's like the analogy of going out and watering a patch of dirt and the Chinese bamboo taking years, 5 years of watering it for it to break the surface. And then within, 2 weeks, it's 100 feet tall. That's kind of an analogy for what it's like to have a vision and then manifest it. So what I would do in hindsight, Kev, in that situation is what I did with my mom one time. And this is nothing against my mother, but the truth of the matter is that all of us are going to have to do what I'm now referring to as a level set sometimes. And so my mom was trying to tell Kevin and I how to run our business. And she always had these really strong opinions about what we should and shouldn't do. And she was trying to help us. She was doing what she thought was constructive feedback to help us succeed. But I remember I had to really ask her a question that was so uncomfortable for me. I said, Mom, how many global businesses have you grown and scaled online? And it was really uncomfortable for her to sit with that, because she felt like it was probably an attack of like, well, the answer is none. Okay, I know the answer is none, and you know the answer is none. But I need you to acknowledge in this moment, please, that you're having really strong opinions that don't have a ton of merit. And so this person that you were in the situationship with all due respect, that person has very low awareness of what was possible, obviously, right? And I'm sure she'd sing a different tune now if she saw how successful we are. But in hindsight, what I would do with people is what's called a level set, like what you tried to do with me regarding my fitness show. And after you tried level setting and I wasn't ready to hear it, so to provide context, Kevin, I thought I'd win my fitness show, and Kevin knew that I wouldn't because I wasn't lean enough, and he tried to tell me because he wanted to help me, just like what this person was probably doing.
Well, and because I'd already been there. I knew you weren't going to win because I had already won one, and I knew what it took to win one. So that part of the understanding, too, is connected to that.
Exactly. And your opinion actually did have merit. Your perspective did have merit because Kevin has won a bodybuilding show, right? So it's not like he's just talking. But I wasn't ready to hear it. And so I did. I lost the show. And then afterwards, I understood what Kevin and some of my other friends were trying to say. But sometimes you have to learn the lesson on your own. I think that at the end of the day, you have to be willing to have the uncomfortable conversation with the people that you love of, if you feel misunderstood, okay, ask them a question. I had a conversation with Emilia recently. Her and I are starting a podcast on Valentine's Day, and it's called Conscious Couples Podcast. It's produced by Next Level Podcast Solutions. Unbelievable. But I remember her and I were both trying to talk about the iTunes description and how to get ready and launch and all this stuff. And I remember I had to ask her, like, sweetheart, who do you believe has higher awareness in the podcast arena? And she said, oh, definitely you. I said, well, do you mind if I lead a little bit more? Can I take the leadership role? Can I pilot and you be the co-pilot right now? And she was totally respectful of that. But prior to that, it was definitely this weird energy of, I'm kind of letting her pilot this, when in reality, I know that I believe that I know better. I know better of how to grow and scale a podcast. I just do. And so it can be very uncomfortable to have higher awareness, but other people think they know better than you. And I think that, I digress here, but the point of this episode is why you may never be understood. We're going to go into why that is. But if you do feel misunderstood, you have to be willing to have the level set conversation like I did with my mom. My mom has not questioned our business choices since then. And by the way, we've become way more successful because we stopped taking guidance from people who just sincerely did have lower awareness.
Yeah.
Sometimes people with the lowest awareness bark the loudest, and it's really important to understand that.
Yeah. It really, it's one of those things of if you're doing something different, this is why the community aspect of entrepreneurship, of whatever it is, the community aspect is so important because you actually get in rooms with people who understand you at a deeper level. Now, again, they might not understand you fully, but I think back to you and I were in a mastermind group. It was you, me, and 3 other people. And we were always the podcasters of the mastermind group because we were the ones who podcasted more than everybody else. And I would venture to guess that just like I don't understand what it's like to have a child and grow a business, they might not understand what it's like to do 7 episodes a week and grow a business. And they probably never will until they get to the point where they're doing what we're doing, if they ever do. So this is why you may be misunderstood forever. Most of the people in your life are not going to do the same stuff you're doing. They just won't. Now, you can go seek out a community that will do that. Okay, cool. When I was a bodybuilder and doing shows, I hung out with a lot of bodybuilders who were doing shows, right? It made sense. I talk to a lot of podcasters now. It makes sense. But there definitely will be some lag time between when you start your journey and when you find your people. Now, do it as soon as humanly possible, but that is why most people are and or feel understood, because most of the people in your life that you've known aren't going to do the same thing you do.
Hello, this is Dr. Tarryn MacCarthy, and we are well into 2022. And maybe you are not willing to have a repeat of the last 2 years. Or perhaps you've had an inkling for quite some time that you are destined for something greater than what you're experiencing in your reality right now. Maybe it's your business or your work, and you know that there's greater value and impact that you can have in your community. Or maybe it's love and connection that's been eluding you. Or perhaps it's your health and wellness, and you know that you can feel better, do better than this. Well, join us at Next Level Live, March 26th, a full-day immersion with experts in their fields to help guide you on how to bring your life to the next level. Looking forward to seeing you there.
In hindsight, that person, I just want to help the listeners understand this, that person that you were in the situationship, did they have high awareness of how to grow and scale businesses and podcasts?
Very little.
Right. And so for anyone listening, that is the thing that I think is so key here is I've suffered from this so much, and I want to be vulnerable and transparent about that. And if you have big goals and dreams, you without a question will be extremely misunderstood. Even just the fact that you have huge goals and dreams is rare in and of itself. And most people who don't have huge goals and dreams will not understand the pressure that you're under and the value of your time and things like that. So I think my takeaway is a little different than what we had originally intended, Kev. It's if you do feel misunderstood, be willing to ask the question. Hey, like, do you believe you're going to be more successful than Alan? Do you believe that you'll be more successful than us? And it's okay if you do, that's fine. But, you know, his track record is fairly good. And so I'm trusting him. So please trust me. Right. And I promise you it's going to work out. And if not, we'll make it work out. And so I think that's the main takeaway for me is the level set conversation. In hindsight, I was never good at that. I was never willing to do that. It's really easy to say you could win a fight when you've never stepped in the ring. And it's really easy to say, oh, that person's not good at fighting because you're seeing them get their butt kicked, so to speak, in entrepreneur land. But yet you've never been in a fight, so you don't understand what they're going through, and you don't understand the growth curve of how much better they're getting at fighting in this analogy. So just something I wanted to bring to the forefront, and I pivoted a little bit on this episode, but I think it's important.
Yeah, it's a tough one because it's one of those rabbit holes when it seems like a very easy topic to talk about, but when you start unpeeling the layers, I think you and I both have realizations as we do it. And I don't necessarily think this is something I've struggled with a lot because for me, I think I've always felt like I was doing something different. But in this, I think this is an interesting part of it too. You have to be pretty, I'm going to use a word from the 1800s probably, steadfast. So that's the word I chose to use. You have to be pretty steadfast in your choice. I remember when I was working as a truck driver, I walked in the office and I did not like my boss. My uncle was technically my boss. The bigger boss just wasn't a nice human being. And I remember walking in there and telling everybody, I was like, yeah, I'm going to quit. Like, I'm just going to leave. And they're like, what are you going to do? And I was like, I don't know. I don't really know. I don't have anything planned. And they're like, so you're just going to quit here and then go do something else? I said, yeah, I think I'm going to do the fire academy. And they just laughed at me. Man.
I got to ask you, this is such a, I think you're really, really good at this.
I appreciate
it. Like, shockingly so. You're not really as influenced by other people's opinions as most people are. It's like fascinating. And so, for example, what's a good example of this? So when your mom and Memes were wondering why you were starting a podcast and they didn't really understand it, you were just totally okay with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is very, very rare. So how are you doing that? I don't understand, I don't think. How are you so okay with being misunderstood?
I think I've always had a deep understanding that what's best for me is all that matters. And I don't mean that with any ego. I've shouted out The Courage to Be Disliked. Shout out to Jenna for the great book recommendation. One of the points that, and if you haven't read it, it's a great book. It's particularly if you listen to it, because the way it's narrated is really powerful. But one of the points was, it doesn't matter what your family thinks. It matters what you think. At the end of the day, the only thing that matters is what you think, really, in the grand scheme of things, as long as you communicate it properly. I've always, when I decided not to go to college, I was the only person I knew who didn't go to college. I was the only person I knew out of my entire friend group. Everybody else went to college. I went to work. And every time I left a job without something else, everybody told me I was crazy. I remember I left my job as a personal trainer and I went to Newport for the weekend and spent like $500. I didn't even have a job. I'm just like, I'm going to go to Newport, Rhode Island and hang out. I have no idea why, but I just think I've always felt like it was most important for me to do my thing.
It's powerful.
And go ahead. I was going to say, and when I left my job to do the podcast, I was more successful than not anybody in my family, but most of my family. So it was kind of like, look, I had what everybody thinks they want. That's not it. You got to trust me. Just like you had to trust me to go get the job. And when the first time I ever went to work, I got into the car with my boss who I'd met one time, and we drove 8 hours to Delaware to live in a house with a bunch of people I didn't know, to do a job I didn't know how to do, making $60 an hour. That was all me winging it too, and it worked out. So I think that's part of it, is like every time I said it was going to work out, it kind of did. So I have to trust that it will.
It's fire. Last question. So when you were in that situationship and you were with someone who really didn't trust you, genuinely, they had low awareness and they thought they knew better than you did, which is fascinating to me. And they thought they knew better than I did too, which is even more fascinating. Why didn't that bother you?
Because it didn't surprise me. It didn't surprise me. Because of course you don't think we're going to be the most successful podcast in the world. I don't some days. So how can
did you feel supported?
I think there's different kinds of support. I think there's some people. I had somebody, an old friend of mine who I don't speak with anymore, said, I'll always be here to support you. And I remember thinking to him and talking to another friend, and I said, but you have to understand the level of support is just like, if I'm ever burning down, I can come to you, but I wouldn't. Like, I don't need the support. I have enough support. I think there's building support and there's maintenance support. I believe in the situationship, I had maintenance support. It was like support versus advice. If somebody comes to you and says, hey, I had a really rough day, you can say, do you want support or do you want advice? Most of the time, I was only getting support, because how do you advise something you're not aware of? It's very hard to. So I had that in the past where I'd have a friend say like, hey, what can I do for you? And honestly, it's very little. There's not a ton. We can talk and you can support me, but that's not really what I need. I need a breakthrough more than anything.
I think in some situations when you're super misunderstood, it's because you're around the wrong people. And I want to make that clear. But sometimes it's because you're not communicating well enough. And then other times it's just par for the course of they have never experienced what you're going through. Kev, what's your main takeaway? I know I took this off the rails a little bit, but I think it was valuable.
You're good. My main takeaway. There's a good chance that if you stay on the path that you're on right now and you continue growing exponentially, the people that don't understand you will understand you even less. And you can continue trying to communicate it. I think that's always the play. But have empathy for the fact that most humans cannot understand what they are yet to do. And you're the same way. It's just different arenas. And I'm the same way, and Alan's the same way. So I have no idea what it's like to go work at a garage all day and change oil. Never done it. I don't even know how to change oil. I have no idea. I can't understand how long of a day it must feel like if you're on your feet all day and it's cold when you're working outside, right? Like there's certain things that I just don't understand because I haven't done enough times. That's my takeaway.
Powerful. Super powerful. I think my takeaway is being misunderstood is probably more of an indicator, and I was thinking about this recently, that you're on the right path rather than the wrong one. Because it means you're doing something truly unique. And you are unique. You aren't like everyone else. And so everyone who ever really achieved their dreams was misunderstood. And I think that's a universal truth for especially early in the journey when no one can see what your vision is. So I think lean into it and have faith in your own ability to figure it out.
Next Level Nation, maybe we were talking about something you're going through in this episode, and maybe after this episode, you'll say, you know what, that is me. What do I do about that? Link in the show notes for our private Facebook group, Next Level Nation. 13 people, I think, over the last couple days have come in. It's a great group of people. Your dreams are going to get gasoline poured on them. Nobody's going to take the wind out of your wings, and it's a place where you can be yourself. And there is no judgment. People may not fully understand you there, but they will try to understand you more. And that's always the goal. Link in the show notes below.
We have sold over 20 tickets already for Next Level Live. It's March 26th, a half-day event. You've heard me talk a lot about it, but you've got to get your tickets as soon as possible. This event will sell out. We will not sell a single ticket above 50. We've already sold 20 plus. Please get your tickets soon. I know that most people tend to wait to the last minute. Do not wait to the last minute because you will miss out.
I expect it to be sold out by the end of February. Before March, it'll already be sold out. All right, now we got to go because we have our team call. Next Level Nation tomorrow for episode number 880. We're talking about the quality versus quantity in your relationships. It is Strategy Saturday. As always, we love you, appreciate you, grateful for each and every one of you. And at NLU, we do not have fans. We have family. We will talk to you all tomorrow.
Please reach out.